Alright, so today I'm going to be covering my loadouts, my settings, my crosshair, along with some of the gear that I use, such as, the mouse pad, mouse, gates, stuff like that. So first, let's get into loadouts here. So for my loadouts, this is my main loadout. This is a Dash XP build. Now I use Thermal Vision, Gateway, and Glitch most of the time. Thermal Vision, I feel like just gives me a lot of clarity in a lot of fights, especially when there's a third party going on. There's often tons of debris. And another thing is I can grab smoke canisters and just throw them down at places, pop my thermal, and essentially become invisible. Another thing is it's really important that if you're facing anybody who's using smoke, that you bring something to counter it. Without some sort of counter to smoke, it can be really, really oppressive. It's honestly a really slept on gadget, the smoke grenade, but since it does have a pretty hard counter of thermal vision, it kind of gets held back a little bit. But if nobody brings that counter, then obviously it is really strong. So I just don't want to run into that. Another thing is it counters cloaked lights. So again, if you don't have a counter to it, it can become pretty tricky. I just find this makes my games feel a lot more consistent, and all my fights feel kind of the same. I don't really have to rely on some sort of gimmick that might catch me off guard. So for this reason, I like using it. It also helps me scout really, really well. If I post up above a building and pop this on, I can see people through trees, bushes, fog, everything. So I'm a big fan of using thermal vision. Gateway is obviously one of the best gadgets in the game. Getting your team around the map, setting up defensive plays, just there's so much you can do with Gateway. It's a no-brainer. And then Glitch is a really big counter to heavies and taking out the gateways of any lights that you run into. So that is why I bring those gadgets. Now in my reserve, this is where I experiment a lot. Gravity Vortex has been there a long time because I really like it on moving platforms. And then 9-3R is something I've been testing out a little bit lately and having some pretty good success because I find it's a good counter to other lights. So that is kind of the reason why I bring it. And then we have Tracking Dart. I've been experimenting with this in Final Round. I find being able to track somebody for a pretty long time, even just one target, is really, really good. But you can actually track multiple targets. So this allows your team to have a lot of information before they push for a fight. And Flashbang is something I've been experimenting again with because I've been finding my main struggle is when I am trying to kite or run away. There are some times where people who use DMAT are able to catch me really well. So I've just been dropping flashbangs at my feet and running away. I also use this as an initiation tool, or if my teammates are stealing, it feels like I can make a bigger impact by just throwing 2 flashbangs on them. It makes it really hard for enemies to take them out. But again, the reserves typically change quite a bit, so I like to experiment a lot. Now we're going to go through this, which is my grapple build. Now this is more just for fun. There's nothing too serious. I do like the Goo Gateway and the Grapple combo. If I'm going to be using Grapple, I feel like Goo almost feels mandatory for me. And a lot of this is, again, experimental or just stuff that I think is kind of fun to use, along with some stuff like the Thermal Vision, Gateway, and Glitch that just feel really, really strong if I really want to push the Grapple into a more meta position. Those are things that I might test out or try out. Next, we have my Cloak build. Now, this is typically what I would be using if I just want to experiment a little bit with using Cloak again, but this is actually what I really like using when I have high ping. So if I'm playing on EU with some friends, then I usually use Cloaking Device instead of Dash, simply because I don't like the delay that happens with Dash on a high ping. So Cloaking Device just feels much more reliable to me, and I can get first shot a little bit easier when I'm playing a little bit stealthily. And again, we have some different reserves here. So Sonar Grenade is a nice tool if I just want to give some feedback to my team. I typically don't use this, but I find if I am on higher ping, it might be better to just kind of give my team some information instead of fully relying on myself. Nullifier and SH1900, I really like comboing. I can use the SH, shoot 2 shots, swap to the Nullifier, nullify them, reload my shots while following them around. It's a really, really strong combo, and I'm a big fan of that. And then again, Gravity Vortex for the reasons that I said before. Now my second main loadout, I want to actually skip ahead to Heavy here. Now this is my main Heavy loadout, and I know this is probably a little bit weird. It doesn't really seem to be a pretty common one, but this is something that really, really works for me, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on the combination of these. Now, all of these gadgets and weapons and stuff are pretty good in the meta. Winch is pretty solid, Shack is pretty solid, RPG obviously, Goo and Dome, but I don't see a lot of people running these together. My main logic is since I don't have Mesh Shield, the Goo sort of compensates a little bit by being able to throw down some really quick cover. Dome Shield for, standard Dome Shield stuff. The RPG is good for either entry or exit damage. And the Shack has pretty good range and close range. It kind of plays in this close to medium range really, really well, which I find pretty good for the heavy class. And the reason I use Winch, even though a lot of NA players uses Mesh, is because I like winch as essentially a counter to mesh, and also being able to pull the cash outs. Now, cash out manipulation is a really big thing, so being able to pull a cash out into the open can just set my team up really, really well. And I think a lot of people sleep on the entire process of setting up a cash out to make it easier for your team, even though it doesn't always directly help me. Being able to assist your team is super, super massive. So that is basically the logic here. Now in the reserves, I've been experimenting with some meta stuff. So obviously the SA-12 and the Sledge are pretty good in the meta right now. So I've been using those a little bit. Shack obviously is just my favorite because I'm more of a tracking type of player, but I do use the SA-12 and Sledge on certain maps, and I like to experiment with it a little bit. The anti-grav cube I find is something I like to use in solo queue. So if I want to cash out manipulate on my own, I don't need someone to set up a jump pad or anything like that. I can just throw an anti-grav cube in front of the cash out and then winch claw the cash out through it in order to fling it even further. Or if I want to stall at the last second. And then C4 is if I want to play drop. Some maps seem to be a little bit better for this, such as Las Vegas, maybe even Monaco. The C4 is pretty solid for dropping a floor each time. But for the most part, like I said, I basically don't swap anything from specs to gadget or weapon. Next, we have our mesh. So this is the meta minigun loadout. So if you're using minigun, I find this is really good. This was sort of set by Busy, since Hoyo also uses the minigun quite a bit. So I've learned a lot from them, and I find this combination works really, really well. You're able to cash out manipulate with the lock bolt. You have C4 for drop. The dome combos really well with the lock bolt. And I find if you're using minigun, you almost need to have lock bolt. If you don't have lock bolt, the minigun can be a really big struggle. So for that reason, I combo all these. The mesh shield is obviously for the times that I'm not ready to fight, since there's going to be some times you might get caught off guard with the minigun and it's not a reactionary weapon. You kind of need to be proactive with it. In the reserves, we have the SA-12, which allows me to play the standard old meta with the mesh SA, RPG, C4, dome, and then we have the barricade in case I want to do some sort of bunker strat. Then I might bring out the shack for that. Next we have this. So this is a Deagle Goo Gun. This is mainly just of my fun loadout when I just want to kind of goof around and do some silly stuff, which is why I have the anti-grav cube in the reserves here along with the barricade, because I find setting up some weird fortress or cocoon or something like that with the Goo Gun is honestly really, really fun. We also have the minigun, but weaker, the M60, and we can bring in the M60 with the lock bolt in order to kind of get a similar feel to that minigun loadout, but a Goo Gun version. So this is kind of my experimental, just have fun kind of loadout. And then we have our medium loadouts. Now I don't play medium too much, but I do have the standard Cerberus DMAT build here, along with the gas mines and FCAR if I want to run the more EU kind of build where they use a lot of gas mines and range weapons. Then we have Data Reshaper in order to counter lock bolts, Zipline for the maps where I need some extra traversal. And then we have the Heal Beam, which probably doesn't get a lot of use right now, but it is a pretty standard meta in terms of the gadgets and weapons here. And the APS and Zipline in order to play more into that support role. And I do like bringing out the CB01, especially on maps like Kyoto, where I might be playing a little bit further range. But this is more my chill, just want to support my team and maybe talk to chat or watch a movie or something like that. Now let's get into the settings here. Now we do have melee aim assist on and auto sprint off. For my crosshair at the moment, I have center dot off, dispersion reticle off, and then we have the static reticle on. We've got the plus sign. I basically tried to make it a plus sign. I wish the little black dot in the middle was something I could remove with the way that I have it set up, but it does become a little bit tricky with using center dot and everything like that to try to remove it. So this is what I really like. It seems to be working quite well for me. For video, these are my settings. I'm not going to go over everything here, but this is just what I've been using. Now, keep in mind, mine are not meant to be this super optimal, like best FPS kind of option. These are just simply something I think looks pretty good. I do make videos and I like having my videos look a little bit better, but I still want a little bit performance. So this is kind of a mix. Now for sensitivity, I'm at 13 with focal scaling on 100%. Now for the most part, these are pretty standard, but the two I want to note is that I have scroll wheel down as my jump. This is so I can get really good inputs on my bunny hops if I'm sliding down a hill and I need to jump at the perfect time. This is basically the bind that I think kind of saves it for me, makes it really consistent. A lot of people ask how I always am able to bunny hop perfectly, and this is kind of my trick. Now, the other important one that I find is to pick up object. I actually have this on scroll wheel up. And the reason I do this is because have you ever had those moments where you might be hitting a jump pad and you try and grab a box or a canister that's on the ground right next to it, and it looks like you pick it up, it goes through the animation, but then all of a sudden it just drops and you actually never grabbed it? Or maybe you're just sliding by something and you try and quickly pick it up and it doesn't do it. Well, this is basically the solution. You can also wait on the end of a gateway in the moment that the cash box pops through. If you're setting up a gateway play, then you can just scroll wheel up and it will instantly grab it. I find since I've been doing this, I've never had a moment since then where I ran into a moment where I picked up something and then it just instantly dropped or it disappeared out of my hand. That is long gone. This has completely solved that for me. So that is why I do it. And I think it's really important that you guys do this too. If you're on controller, I understand this can be pretty tricky. Hopefully the devs look into this. I think this has been a thing for a very long time now. I don't know when this was introduced or if it's always been there, but this is what I've been running for a pretty long time in order to solve that. Now for all the gear that I use, let me just kind of break it down. So we have the Wooting 60HE. I did buy some custom Cyberpunk keycaps that I put on that I really like. This was just some, wooden wrist rest that I found off of Amazon. Nothing really special, but pretty affordable. I do have a stream deck here that I use for transitioning scenes, pausing and playing music, muting my mic, stuff like that. Now, under the keyboard, I do change up the mouse pad a little bit. At the current moment, this is an AC Pro. This is a custom one, obviously, that has the Apple logo on it. And over to this side, we are going to start with this. So this is the sleeve that I like using. So Pulsar gaming sleeves, I really, really enjoy. This one's a white one. I usually have a full-size black one that I typically use, but Pulsar is at least currently my favorite. I'll probably be trying some more as I go on. And a lot of people ask why I use a sleeve when I'm not using glass. And the reason is because I live in Canada and sometimes it's a little bit humid. Temperature can be a little bit variable. So if I am using my arm against this desk, as you see, it's fine. Then if I apply a little bit of pressure, it starts to stick a little bit. And you can still see it with a finger, right? If I were to drag this across, it can kind of skip a little bit. And that kind of builds up with humidity. So even if I have this at the edge of the desk, which I try to do, there are still times where my arm might catch it. And that little drag really annoys me. Another thing is having a sleeve, especially one that covers the wrist, will wear out your mouse pad a lot less. So if you're using your hand, a lot of your skin cells are going to get into it and you're going to have to clean your mouse pad more frequently. You're going to wear it down. So that is why I like using a sleeve, even with cloth. And then the mouse that I'm currently using is the Mad R. I really, really enjoy this one. And I do recommend replacing most mice that you buy. So I bought these Ultra Glides off AliExpress. There's ice and speed ones. So I like using some sort of replacement feet if I can, usually just to find the speed that kind of works for me. But I don't think this is really that big of a deal. But depending on which one you have, I know Logitech, for example, has some pretty bad stock feet. So I usually recommend replacing those. And finally, we have the mouse pad here that I kind of wanted to talk about last. So as you can see here, this is the Metrova Balance X Mid. And this was actually a mouse pad that really, really shocked me. I'm going to show you guys some clips of the first time that I got to use some of these Metrova pads. But I've been, testing pads for quite some time now. I've tried stuff on the control side, stuff on the speed side, balance side. And this is the first time that I really felt properly locked in. And it just felt really smooth to use this pad. Not like that the pad is smooth. I mean, it is, but I just mean it was a really smooth transition to being able to use this versus what I've been using before, where it might take a little while. This was first test and it was already incredible. And so they had actually sent these pads out to me. As you can see here, there is a yellow version as well. This is the Violet Mist Soft. So these are the two pads that seem the most interesting to me. And I performed way better than I was expecting to on these pads. Basically what happened is they just said, yeah, send us some designs, we'll get them printed, and you can test out the pads and see how you feel. So after I used them, I reached back out and said, holy crap, these are actually amazing pads and I really want to work with you guys, maybe get some sort of discount going, because this is a product I genuinely really enjoy and believe in. And what they were able to do was set up a discount code. So if you use the code APPO on their website, you can get a small discount. And one of the biggest selling points to me about Metrova was the fact that I can mix and match bases with cloth. And a lot of different companies really aren't doing that. They might have a cloth that they release, but then there's, one or two variants, or maybe there's no variants in the base. And sometimes the base really matters. And with these pads, they just kind of stick. I'm unfortunately jiggling my camera by doing this, just trying to move it. But yeah, these things just stick to your desk and the base is just really, really solid. And this is a mid. But there's also, firm, soft, extra soft. So you can mix and match and find something you like. Now, this is meant to be kind of like an Artisan Zero, but in my experience, this has been a better performing Artisan Zero, and a huge selling point as well is being able to customize the design as well, and it's not really that expensive. So for me, the Metrova pads are basically just end game pads for me, being able to get a perfect custom design, have something that lasts a long time. The fact that the Balance X is water resistant is also a huge bonus, considering this one performed the best for me as well. So instead of having to replace my pads every few months, or having to clean it up basically every month or a couple weeks like I have with other pads, this one just lasts a lot longer, and you just have to clean it with water. Now each pad is going to obviously perform a little bit differently, but as I said, I'm pretty impressed with these pads, so I definitely recommend checking that out. And one thing that's really nice about Metrova is they actually play the finals. They are also big PC peripheral nerds like myself, so they're definitely my type of people, and what they wanted to do was do a giveaway of these mouse pads. So we have one of each. We have the yellow one, which is the Violet Mist Soft, and then we have the Balance X Mid. We're going to be doing a giveaway, so there'll be 2 winners. One person will win this one, and one person will win this pad. I'm also going to be throwing in some multi-bucks into the mix, so if you do win the pad, you'll also be getting some multi-bucks for the finals. And all you have to do to enter this giveaway is to make sure that you join my Discord so that I can reach out to you, and comment below which pad you want to get. Do you want to get the Balance X, or do you want to get the Violet Mist? It's really that simple, and I will reach out to the winners of the pads there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe if you're not already. Thank you to all my members. Now get your loadout settings and all your gear. Get into the finals. Win all of your tournaments, and I will see you in the finals.